Alex Kennedy, hoopshype.com, that Kyrie Irving is essentially saying, I don't want to play with LeBron James. I thought people were trying to put super teams together, not leave them.
Yeah, it's really surprising, honestly. I think you look at the age gap, that's a big part of it. The fact that Kyrie is 7 years younger. I think he wants to prove that he can be a superstar player. He wants to have his own team. The sense of urgency isn't the exact same for LeBron and Kyrie. So there are some things there that, you look at, but it's surprising. I think this is one of those things where Kyrie may not realize how good he has it until he goes to another situation and he's not in the finals every year and he's struggling and having to take on all the responsibilities that come with being a number one option. It's unfortunate, but, like you said, the NBA has been very crazy this offseason. We've seen so many All-Stars traded. This is just the latest crazy storyline, and every week it seems like it's something new.
So who are some of the teams that are interested? Do you envision the Cavaliers obviously having a lot of suitors, and do you anticipate that Kyrie Irving, in fact, will be wearing another jersey this season?
Well, the four teams that he brought up in his meeting with the Cavaliers were the Spurs, the Heat, the Knicks, and the Timberwolves. He likes those situations a lot. It would give him a chance to go, play a big role and be able to basically have a team built around him. There's a few more teams that I like personally. I think the Milwaukee Bucks would be very interesting. They're a team that is very talented and has very good players at every position except point guard. If you look at their point guard position last year, they were starting Matthew Dellavedova, Malcolm Brogdon. If they were able to get Kyrie Irving and put him alongside some of their other pieces like Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton, Jabari Parker, that's a very interesting team. I think the Denver Nuggets are another team that is kind of in the same boat. Because Kyrie's still 25 years old, he doesn't have to go to one of these teams that's in win now mode. He can afford to go to a team that's, 1 or 2 seasons away. I think Denver has a really nice core. They had a really strong offseason. I think everyone kind of looks at them as being one of those up-and-coming teams in the NBA. So because he is a bit younger, 25, you can afford to go to a team like Milwaukee or Denver and wait for things to kind of pan out a little bit. Whereas I think, LeBron, for example, every single season there's that sense of urgency. I have to win now. My time's running out. I think that's the difference. There are very different pages at this stage in their career. So those are the some teams that I'm looking at. Certainly more teams are going to come up. Whenever you have a guy like Kyrie Irving who is this talented, is this young, and is on a great contract too, you're going to have plenty of teams calling and seeing what it would take to pry him away from Cleveland. The Cavaliers, they really have no obligation to trade him. Kyrie does not really have a ton of leverage when you look at his contract. They could tell him, no, we're going to keep you and you have to play through this. Granted, that could be pretty awkward and lead to some tension. And obviously, they're trying to keep LeBron James happy. So that may not be the best decision. But if you're just talking about contract leverage, Kyrie doesn't really have much here. It's not like he can force his way to a certain team. There are going to be plenty of teams that are willing to take him on, without a long-term commitment. And those teams may be able to offer much more than some of the teams that were on his list.
Yeah, that was my question to you, Alex. Does this indicate to you that LeBron is out from Cleveland next season?
It's very possible. I would say that it seems more likely than it did, a few weeks ago before this report kind of surfaced. Because the big thing with LeBron was always, if he was going to leave Cleveland, he had to go to a situation where, it made sense for him and he'd be able to continue to compete for a championship and would be closer to a championship. At this stage in his career, everything is about winning a title. For him to leave that fan base in Cleveland again and relocate his family, it would have to be a great situation that puts him closer to winning a title. So if Kyrie Irving is leaving, and you look at the rest of this Cavs team, obviously if Kyrie Irving leaves, they're in a situation where they don't really have a ton of flexibility cap-wise. They can't really add a bunch of pieces. So that maybe sets things up for LeBron James to walk away and say, look, I don't think I can win a championship here. Even if they trade Kyrie for, a few different pieces, you're still really far away from the top teams in the NBA. Kyrie is that important to this team. And if you trade a guy like Kyrie, you're not going to get equal value for him. You're going to get something back, maybe draft picks, young players. But, Kyrie's one of the best point guards in the NBA. So this could be setting the stage for LeBron to leave next summer. It's very possible. I could see him saying, I tried to make it work. I did win one championship while I was in Cleveland. Kyrie wanted out. He could also, point to the fact that Dan Gilbert didn't bring back David Griffin as the GM. There are a number of things that are kind of setting themselves up to be, reasons or excuses for LeBron to point to and say, I tried to make it work, but, it didn't. So I had to move on.
So what kind of return do you think that what kind of haul of players do you think that Kyrie would bring back?
Well, I think you have to get a point guard back. You look at their roster right now, they don't really have a point guard that they could just, put in the starting lineup, if Kyrie leaves. They talked about Derrick Rose potentially being, a guy they go after in free agency, but obviously with him, there's injury concerns, and that's a huge step down. Some of the players that have been discussed, there's been 3-team talks about Phoenix, and Eric Bledsoe. Obviously, Eric Bledsoe is someone that is, with LeBron James' agency. Rich Paul is his agent. So there's some ties there. And there were some talks around the draft with Phoenix about Kyrie Irving going to the Suns and getting Eric Bledsoe back. There's been talk that they could make this a 3-team deal and try to get Carmelo Anthony back, which, again, would be about keeping LeBron James happy since they're friends, and that would keep the Cavaliers in win-now mode. I think, what you need is you need a point guard back. You need some kind of, draft compensation back, because I think that also allows Cleveland to be prepared in the event that LeBron James does leave. I think you have to almost build this team for, to contend right now still, but with the idea that, okay, we may be losing LeBron James, and, that has to be in the back of their mind. They can't just act like that's not a possibility at this point. So I would say a strong point guard to fill in for Kyrie, a veteran or two so that they can, add some depth to their team, and then maybe a draft pick. That's the good thing about Kyrie having, 3 years left on his deal with a player option in the final year. You're going to be able to get more than, say Indiana got for Paul George. It's not like he's a 1-year rental, and he's younger too. So that you should be able to get, a decent haul back. It's not going to be equal value, like I said, but you should be able to get something back that, keeps Cleveland at least in contention. And, fortunately for them, they're in the Eastern Conference. If they were in the West, this would be much, much more difficult.
I know LeBron James was hanging out with Eric Bledsoe. You mentioned Eric Bledsoe. He's been hanging out with DeMarcus Cousins this offseason. You think LeBron has like this how does this work? Does he go to the Cavs and say, all right, here's the guys I want. These are the guys I like, or do they not have that communication, or does he just make it clear to them? I mean, what level of communication do you think LeBron has with the organization, or is there no communication between the two of them?
Well, at this point, I'm not really sure. I think when David Griffin was there, they gave Griffin some autonomy where he could go out and make trades. Whenever he went and acquired, Iman Shumpert and J.R. Smith in that trade, or whenever he went and got Timothy Mozgov, whenever he went and made some of these different moves, Griffin was really working with his staff. And, maybe LeBron was consulted or was, given a heads up, hey, we're going to go after this guy, or what do you think about this? But he certainly wasn't as involved as people like to make it sound. Everyone says, oh, GM LeBron, and they made it sound like he was calling the shots there. But, he trusted Griffin. And I think, after Griffin was let go, he made it really clear, in his, public statement that, he loved the job that Griffin did. And he really kind of gave Griffin some space to build the team, because I think LeBron, he wants certain players, and, he knows the game, but he also understands that he's not a salary cap expert. He's not a GM, and he has so much stuff on his plate already that he wants a GM that can, make moves and do things on their own a bit. But now I will say, I don't really know what's happening in Cleveland. With David Griffin out, you have Kobe Altman, who was he's the youngest GM in the league right now. He was serving as the interim GM. Now they're, putting him in place because they weren't able to bring in someone else. They tried to get Chauncey Billups. You talked to a number of different people. Now it's very possible that LeBron is more involved because they're doing everything they can to keep him happy. You don't have an experienced GM in place that, you can trust. You're basically just kind of going and going with a first-time GM here. So, LeBron may be much more involved now than he was in the past. Those GM LeBron jokes, I think, used to be kind of played out. But now I'm not so sure. With the situation in the front office right now, it's very possible LeBron is more involved than ever before.
I'm talking with Alex Kennedy, hoopshype.com. A couple other quick NBA stories before we dive into some stuff on JJ Redick. What about Carmelo Anthony? Obviously, he's got the no trade. There was some talk about Portland. How about the Thunder? Is Carmelo more open to other destinations now other than just maybe Houston and Cleveland?
I don't think so. I think he still wants Houston. I think that's his number one option. I think the second option would be Cleveland, but he got really excited about the possibility of going to Houston whenever those two teams were talking during Las Vegas Summer League. A lot of people were saying that it was basically a done deal. People that were involved in the talks or familiar with the talks, they thought that he was going to Houston and it was going to happen very quickly. And then all of a sudden, the Knicks bring in Scott Perry and they slow down the talks a little bit. They wanted to see if they can get other teams involved. And, Portland's the one that's come up, but they don't really have a whole lot to offer. They have some younger pieces, but, some of their contracts aren't very great. I think also Portland will be hesitant to give up very much because if you're not on that list of teams that Carmelo, wants to be on, then you're basically trading for him as a rental. And again, anytime a team is trading for a guy as a rental, they're not going to give up a lot of pieces because you're not going to mortgage your future for 1 year of a player, especially 1 year of Carmelo Anthony at this stage of his career, at this age. So I think it's still going to be Houston or Cleveland at some point. Houston seems like the front runner to me. If you talk to Chris Paul and James Harden, those guys think it's a done deal. It's going to happen eventually. Carmelo wants it to happen. Usually, when all those things kind of come together and this many people want it to happen, it usually will.
What about Derrick Rose? I mean, you hinted at Cleveland. He met with the Lakers. He seems like an interesting guy at this stage of free agency as well.
Yeah, free agency hasn't really went the way he wanted it to. He was hoping that there would be some more, options for him and more lucrative multi-year deals. But I think he's at the point now where he realizes that he has to go basically sign a 1 year deal and play well, and then next off season, maybe he gets his payday. So now he's looking at 3 different situations, and he's hoping that one of those can lead to a breakout year. He's talked to the Lakers, he met with them, and has talked to them throughout this process. The idea is, go mentor Lonzo Ball, potentially play alongside Lonzo Ball at times. That's what the Lakers have been pitching to all the guards they've been talking to. They've really made an effort to bring in a lot of guards and talk to different guys, and they're saying, look, you can play alongside Lonzo Ball at times, you can play alongside Kentavious Caldwell-Pope at times. Basically, have them be interchangeable. So, and they're really selling, look, you're going to play in a big market, you've got national TV, you get the exposure of being on in a Laker uniform. If you play well, you're going to be rewarded for it. That's what the Lakers are pitching. The Cavaliers now, they're really interesting because if Kyrie Irving does get traded and they have a hole, then all of a sudden at the point guard position, you could say to Derrick Rose, you could be a starter on potentially, one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. And, that would be, I think, ideal for Derrick Rose. That's kind of the best case scenario for him where, it looked like he had no option to be a starter. Now, all of a sudden, just by kind of waiting things out and some luck, he could end up being a starter on a contending team if the Cavs, aren't able to get a big-time point guard back and this Kyrie trade does happen. So I think right now, and the Chicago Bulls, the other team that he's talking to, which is kind of surprising because, he obviously exited Chicago. Things were kind of awkward at that point, but he's talking with the Bulls again too. So those are the 3 teams he's looking at right now. I think he's waiting to see what happens with the Kyrie Irving situation. He had wanted to make a decision over the weekend, but now I think we're going to see him probably wait this thing out for a little bit longer. None of these teams are in a rush, so he can kind of afford to wait and see what happens with Kyrie Irving. And if Irving does leave and there's a hole in Cleveland, I think that's probably the spot where he lands.
Alex Kennedy's with us, hoopshype.com. What about maybe one of the higher profile free agents still out there, Nerlens Noel? He is restricted, but what's the deal with him in Dallas?
Yeah, it's really kind of crazy because he's by far the best free agent available, I think. For him, it's really unfortunate. He was hoping to get a big offer sheet from one of these teams that had money. The Atlanta Hawks at one point were kind of considering it, but then they got Dwayne Dedmon, so they've kind of moved on, and they decided to go with a cheaper option at center. The Brooklyn Nets are a team that still has some money. There really aren't very many teams out there left that can make a big offer for a restricted free agent. It's hard being restricted anyway. There's so many guys that go through restricted free agency and they don't really get the kind of offer that they want. Sometimes those guys, have to settle for a smaller deal by just re-signing with their team. Nerlens could do that. He could decide, okay, I'm going to take a multi-year deal with Dallas and not sign an offer sheet. Or, some of these guys decide to sign for the 1 year qualifying offer. If he plays well, then he can go be unrestricted next summer and maybe get a big payday that way. So it's always tough being restricted. And, sometimes, these guys wait and then eventually agree to a deal with their current team. That could happen, but it is possible that he'll sign the 1-year qualifying offer and just kind of play this year out so that next year he can be unrestricted. But yeah, I mean, it's really tough for Nerlens. There's really not a lot of situations out there right now where you can look at a team and say, okay, that's going to be the team that offers him the big offer sheet he's looking for. There really isn't any situation I can see that makes a ton of sense.
All right, Alex Kenny, HoopType.com. Interesting stuff from JJ Redick in that his first podcast and the video that he also put out, The Uninterrupted, really a behind-the-scenes look at his free agent process. And tell us a little bit more about JJ's thoughts, and because a lot of people thought he went to Philly and it seemed to be a money grab. But after hearing this and getting a chance to see some of this, what did you think about the process for JJ Redick?
Yeah, well, first of all, the video is fascinating. I tweeted it out. I would recommend anyone go check it out. It's on Uninterrupted. It's a 15-minute short documentary, basically, where he walks through his entire free agency process from the very start to, making his decision and everything that went into it. I think it's really interesting because it shows the human side of things. I think people forget, that players have to consider their family's thoughts and consider, so many different things that are outside of basketball. I do think the $23 million he got from Philly played a big role in this. It's, obviously a big factor. But, when you watch this video, you also understand, okay, he was really comfortable in Philly. He felt like it was a really good fit there. I think he really wanted to have fun playing basketball again. And that was one thing he pointed out in the video. He said that when he was with the Clippers the past year, he really lost his joy for the game. So I think the opportunity to go be around a bunch of young guys that are really hungry and, fighting to make the playoffs for the first time and fighting to, become this contender in the Eastern Conference over the next few years, that was really intriguing to him. And you look at this past year in Philly, it just looked like everyone was having fun. And I think that's attractive to free agents. Certainly that's how Golden State was able to land a number of guys in recent years, including Kevin Durant. But, in addition to Kevin Durant, some of the, role players around them, guys would look at their team and say, wow, they're having a lot of fun, or these guys really get along. I think you got that same sense in Philly. Even when the team was struggling a little bit, the fan base was so electric. Joel Embiid obviously seemed like he was having a great time, and he was always the life of the party. These guys look at the situation and say, okay, I can go here and have some fun. I'm going to be around a bunch of hungry guys. And I think also JJ wanted the veteran role. I think he wanted to be able to be a mentor to some of these guys and, pass on some of his knowledge. And then he also talked about the importance of being in a city that he likes, and he loves Philadelphia. He made that very clear in the video. The three teams that he was kind of talking about in the video were Brooklyn, Philadelphia, Miami. And then Houston did come up at one point just because they made a call, and they obviously were looking to add to their roster after they, started adding pieces. But those were the three teams, and it was because those teams have cities that he likes. So it was kind of interesting to see him talk about, the different balance and all the different factors he weighed, from family life to the city to the roster to just having fun again. So I would definitely recommend, everyone go check it out. He's really candid and open in it. You don't really see that from players during free agency very often. A lot of times guys kind of just make their decision, and then everything's kind of just, stuff that, they speak in sound bites, and they don't really open up the process. But he really showed the entire process, and I give him a ton of credit. I think more players should do stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know how much interaction you've had with him, but he seems like a pretty down-to-earth, genuine type of guy.
Yeah, he really is. I covered him in Orlando early in his career, so I got to know him when he was really young, and then I watched him mature. It was really cool kind of watching him come into his own as a player, because he came from Duke, and obviously, people hated him and all that stuff, and he admits he was a cocky guy. And then I think being in Orlando, being on the bench for some time, and then playing for Stan Van Gundy really humbled him and changed his career. Stan really helped him take that next step as a player, made him into a better two-way player. Suddenly he wasn't a defensive liability anymore. He was very good on defense. He became really good at running around screens and, not just being a, catch and shoot guy. He could create his own shot. He really matured a lot, became a great veteran leader. And then, over time, he just became, a consummate pro, a great locker room guy, a great veteran. So it's been interesting to watch his development. He's actually going to be on the podcast, the Hoop Site podcast that we do very soon, sometime in the next week. So we're going to kind of talk about his decision and, what to expect going forward in Philly. I'm looking forward to having him on the podcast. But, yeah, he's definitely a good guy to have around your locker room, around your team.
He's Alex Kennedy at Alex Kennedy NBA. Check him out at hoopshype.com. And he does have the documentary with JJ Redick. In fact, I'll retweet that for you right now so you can get that as well.
I tweeted it out as well.
Good. So check that out on JJ Redick. Alex, good stuff as always, pal.
Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.